Welcome back, everyone. Today we're talking about diving into lessors. Harris, you might be surprised by this, but why are we diving into lessors? You might think we would go 3PLs or shippers, but lessors to me seem like the next one on the list.
Yeah, and it's entirely non-obvious, right? Because when you tend to think about railroads or the rail industry, it's railroads and shippers sitting, kind of across from one another. And that's a very symbiotic, cyclical relationship that kind of goes back and forth. But I don't know the last time that you went grocery shopping. But can you imagine doing that without a basket or a cart?
Oh, I mean, I'd be dropping a bunch of eggs on the floor.
Right, exactly. So it's the kind of behind the scenes piece that makes everything else move. You can have all the waybills, you can have all the prices, you can have all the invoices in the world, you can have all the locomotives, but there are no cars to be able to move things with. Well, nothing moves.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's really exciting that we're talking about kind of the broader equipment owner space. Sid, if you had to explain what a railcar lessor does to somebody at a dinner party, what would you say?
I gotta go to more dinner parties. Have you ever rented a car? I'd explain it as they are the Hertz, the Avis, the Alamo of the rail industry. They own rail cars. They lease them out to people who need to ship goods.
Boom. That's amazing.
Invite me to your dinner party.
Yeah,
people.
exactly.
I make good conversation sometimes. Yeah. So last time we defined what tech adoption means. What does it mean for the lessor standpoint? What comes to mind is telematics, predictive maintenance, predictive cycle times. But what does that mean when we're talking lessors?
Yeah, it's interesting because railroads are such this giant monolith that operate track and locomotives and dispatch centers and railcar repair shops. And so there's just so much more canvas there to paint over. With the equipment leasing folks, you would think that they are only unilaterally thinking about railcars or the equipment that they own. Maybe they own intermodal chassis as well. But there's also an entire segment of that business which is around the maintenance and repair of those facilities. So having the facilities do that, having the technology that allows you to kind of plan the inventory and repair work. And then there's also the piece of how do you actually get your inventory out to market? And so there's an entire piece around quoting and contract management. And so there's an entire broad sweeping set of maintenance that goes just beyond what is on or operating the physical car. And so there, it's a pretty deep and, somewhat hidden kind of behind the scenes back office type of operation, but it's really critical to making sure those 1.65 or 6.7 million rail cars are in motion at any given time. I think another part of your question was, where do they sit from a technology adoption curve, or where are they at in the journey? They're still really early. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that, look, the broader industry is just a little bit slower to adopt technology. But one of the really, really fun and exciting things about the equipment owner space is they have so much to gain internally for their own operations, but also how their ability to serve their own customers.
So last time we talked about the people who actually own the tracks, the railroads.
Right.
Now we're talking about the people who own what goes on the track.
Yeah.
On the rail car side. What does it mean for everyone else in the space, for equipment owners, for lessors to adopt technology?
So let's zoom out real quick.
Yeah.
Then we'll actually zoom back in. So when we kind of think about it, roughly 600 railroads in North America, 140,000 miles of track. Class 1s account for 90+% of the overall revenue, right? And so without the railroads, like we talked about, nothing moves.
Yeah.
But you have to have the capability to put stuff in to be able to move it. And so there are roughly, depending on when you looked and who's doing the measurement, there are roughly 1.65 or 1.67 million rail cars in service on any given year in North America. Roughly 70 to 80% of those are actually out on or owned and operated by equipment owners. And so sometimes that can be an equipment manufacturer that also has a leasing arm. Sometimes that can be an organization that buys brand new equipment or hosts own equipment and then leases that out to other operators. Sometimes they lease it directly out to shippers. Sometimes they lease it back to railroads. It all kind of depends. But one of the really interesting things about that segment is when technology is more broadly adopted by the individual equipment owner, the individual user of the actual rail car benefits from that technology. And so when we think about the broader network effect, so if a railroad improves their tech stack, really great, super exciting, but they may only account for 10, 20, 25, 30% of the overall track miles.
Mm-hmm.
And so that technology might be really good when the asset or the shipment is moving on that railroad. But it doesn't extend all the way to Maine.
Yeah.
So I think one of the really, really interesting things is that because there's such a high level of interoperability for the rail cars and they can just go back and forth between railroads, that's where I think the tech leverage really is.
So it sounds like there's a trickle-down effect. And if lessors adopt technology, it's actually going to end up impacting to the benefit of shippers and others who work with these lessors.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to reach back in the bag and go after the Reagan definition of that. But what I would say is I think the ability to gain the network effect of technology adoption, right? It goes beyond just one railroad. Mm-hmm. It's oftentimes it's not just one rail car, right? You're not just throwing out one piece of technology for one rail car. Yeah. There's absolutely a way to scale that up. And because I tend to think about rail cars as representing kind of the living, breathing element of the railroad. So like if we look at a map and we look at all the rail cars moving around like we do sometimes, mm-hmm. It kind of looks like it's alive. And so I think that's where the benefit is going to accrue to the majority of shippers.
Harris, hot take.
Oh boy.
Lessors will be the fastest stakeholder group in the rail space to adopt technology.
Agree. Yeah, totally agree.
Why?
If you think about it, they have the largest amount of fixed assets. So it feels like it's inventory on the shelf.
Yeah.
How do I make my inventory that's on the shelf better than your inventory? I give it some sort of differentiating factor or mm-hmm. offering. Mm-hmm. And one of the best ways that you can do that is oftentimes low cost, widely distributable, that you don't have to physically attach onto the side of the car mm-hmm. to get is you leveraging technology from a much more software platform play. And so I think that is the area where we're going to see a lot of acceleration.
I think we're already seeing it. Harris, are you seeing that when it comes to working with lessors today and them adopting technology from all these different, various areas where they want to build on?
It's interesting because when we think about the broader lessor market, one of the things that we've talked about in the rail industry, and there's a fear that there has been maybe too much consolidation. Some people have the opinion of that if more consolidation happens, it's really bad. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm not drawing an opinion there. But there's also been consolidation on the railcar leasing side where you've got, the top 3 or 4 owning the absolute majority of that 80% that we talked about mm-hmm. earlier. And so there's a longer tail of smaller leasing companies or companies that own their own fleets and they're operating today. When we think about has there been really strong tech adoption, we're seeing some green shoots and some absolutely early signs of that happening. But doesn't mean it's accruing probably fast enough that most shippers truly see it. And the challenge is if you're leasing 2,000 rail cars or 50,000 rail cars or whatever that is for you, the technology better apply to all the rail cars that you're leasing or you're not going to see the full benefit. That's just the way it is. Thinking about this whole kind of construct of if the technology is going to work, you need it across all the rail cars that you have. Well, if that's true, the obvious answer is telematics. Sid, I know you've been working with lessors for some time, and you've gotten some differing opinions on kind of the application, the utilization, the reliability. Tell me a little bit more.
I think in the telematics space, everything, if it worked, would be fantastic. Mm-hmm. But when you actually talk about the tactical application mm-hmm. of equipping rail cars with telematics, that's where the pain is. Mm. Like you said before, Harris, it can't just be one or a couple cars in any given fleet that has this technology. It needs to be all or nothing in order for it to work. And so I think the hard part now is how do you actually see the benefits of telematics if it's only a portion of cars equipped?
Okay. So is there a little bit of chicken or egg where you've got the purchaser or the shipper who's using the rail car that's effectively asking all of the equipment owners to equip them, right? Like it feels like there's a cold start here.
So, I'm still learning more. I'm still working with different lessors and trying to learn more. And I think it's more, I come from the trucking space. I come from, hey, the ELD mandates happened and overnight all of the, trucks were equipped with telematics. Why can't we just do that in the rail car side? Why can't we just snap our fingers, telematics equipped across the board, throw an Apple AirTag on it, call it a day? But what I'm learning and what I'm coming to understand more is it's more complicated than people are giving it credit for.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cars to equip. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of different information to be able to slice and dice to draw opinions from around, is there better tracking? Is it better data than, CLM event data that's being reported out by railroads? And I think we're still in the early stages of learning what those implications are. So I think we're leaning in the right direction. Telematics is definitely the future, but it's harder than people think it is.
And when you kind of think about some of the barriers, right?
Yeah. I mean,
what do you think is, is it the balance sheet and the P&L that's
I was
holding
going to
some folks
say,
back?
Price is always a factor, it needs to benefit. They need to see what is this actually going to do in terms of it being financially, a good investment. I'd also say too, it's hard to equip cars. You might equip cars and, a sensor falls off or cars smash into each other and that sensor's dead. That's, a lot of, profit to burn.
Yeah.
So I think it's a delicate balance of chicken or the egg kind of, know, we go back to that.
Yep. Totally agree. Yeah. I can absolutely see why there is some hesitancy.
Yeah.
Because the payback isn't clear. So is telematics the technology of the future for the equipment owners?
I mean, it's seeming that way. I think we're still a long ways away from it being or equipping all cars. I'd say probably more 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so you think we've got a long time horizon?
I think it's a long time horizon. However, I do think that we're going to see more lessors leaning into telematics and really trying to understand what are all the benefits that can be drawn from, equipping rail cars. But I also think that there's a ton of other parts of technology that they're going to be experimenting and exploring with. It's not just telematics.
Right. It's interesting. The way that I think about it is, I think we all know telematics makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Having your ability to find your keys when you inevitably lose them, maybe every morning. I mean, you would want that at kind of a grand scale for these it costs a lot to ship stuff by rail.
Yeah.
So you would absolutely want that perspective. It just seems like the adoption has been really slow to get started. And so there's probably going to be a critical mass that drives that to accelerate. But I think what's really going to change that is there needs to be a view or usability of that data into those workflows that drive somebody to go from a no to a yes. Right?
Yeah. Or to hey, we're going to equip a car and see how it goes, to let's equip the whole fleet.
Yes, exactly. And that's ultimately, I think, one of the big directions the industry has. I think there's a lot more to do within the equipment owner space that isn't going to require telematics.
I agree.
And I think there's a broader kind of customer experience play that all of the equipment owners, I believe, they've all thought about. When you think about the shop to headquarters kind of experience, when you think about the overall lease flow.
So Harris, finish this sentence for me. The biggest missed opportunity for lessors right now is
predictive maintenance. Look, you
Why?
can absolutely imagine that they are getting overcharged somewhere for something, for some bad order. Maybe it's a coupler or a brake beam or a sill step or whatever it is. And imagine if you could just pull that rail car off at a lower cost servicing opportunity at the right time. And I think so there's obviously some predictive element with there, but that is also part of the value of what telematics could potentially do is they could give you a sense of, hey, the oil light is on.
Come look at this.
Time to come in.
Alert.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, folks. This was another really good episode of Don't Dwell on It. Thoroughly enjoyed this one, although I think it was a surprise for you and I to dive into the equipment owners. We've still got a handful more verticals to talk about. 3PLs, shippers, and then we've also got terminals that
Yeah.
that we're going to be taking a dive into. And so, if you, the audience, have any ideas of direction you'd like us to go, please let us know. We're happy to take that direction and absolutely run with it. Really appreciate you listening in and helping us think a little bit more about this. Thanks for listening.